Good morning, everyone. We'll just give everyone 30 seconds to 45 seconds to drop in, and then we'll kick off. So just bear with us for a few seconds. Go grab yourselves a cup of tea and coffee, etc. Brilliant. Right, let's kick off. So look, first of all, thanks for attending our webinar this morning. So we will be running through, as you can see the title here, Spend Analytics and ITAM for FinOps and Empowering Financial Control. Just going to give a quick snapshot of some of the presenters today. So we're not going to go round and do individual introductions. Quite frankly, this webinar is more about you guys that have taken the time to join us. So we've got just under 120 attendees, and we're looking to try and make it as interactive as possible. So please feel free at any time to ask some questions within the tool that's provided. We will have an FAQ section towards the end that we'll look to get through all of them. If we do run out of time, we will be sending out a link to not only the recording of this webinar, but also to answer all of the questions that have been asked, along with some FAQs that we've got towards the end as well. So with that, we will kick off. So what can you expect from this webinar? So we're going to run through elements of visibility within IT, shadow spend, FinOps, and just provide some insights into what we've learned with our decades of experience from both Be Digital from a software asset management perspective and Spend Key from a procurement and spend analytics perspective, and how our two organizations have kind of come together to offer a partnership that utilizes both of our relevant services. So the starting point for us is visibility and the lack of holistic visibility that we tend to find within large organizations within their IT spend. So you can see a stat down on the bottom left that says on average international enterprises will waste 12.5% of their third-party expenditure. Now this is something that we've seen time and time again. So a great example is with a global e-commerce client that we worked with that had a budget of just under £30 million. Now, having run through our spend analytics platform, they actually discovered an additional 50%, so just shy of £15 million, that they hadn't accounted for within their IT budget. That I think probably 5 to 10% that they were aware. The rest are around 40% they were completely unaware of. So from our perspective, and one of the reasons Spend Key was set up, is to provide a level of visibility that current executives simply do not have to hand today. And we're going to spend the rest of this webinar running through how we do that. We're going to provide some use cases of existing clients, and hopefully provide some examples that hit home to everyone that's on this webinar. And as I touched on the previous slide, we'll try and make this as interactive as possible. So any questions come up, or if we skip through things, because we're going to try and not have this as death by PowerPoint. We do have a roundtable and a panel discussion at the end that we want to get to, and really open the floor up. So what is it that Spend Key do, and how do we do it? So we provide a data-driven solution, and more importantly, we provide clients with access to make data-driven decisions. So what we tend to find with clients is there's always an inkling of something, or some data somewhere maybe not being fully 100% accurate, or they have an inkling that something within their budgeting or their forecasting or their reporting doesn't quite add up, but it can be quite difficult to get down to the reasoning why. So what Spend Key do is we utilize AI. So we take in data, and we take in messy data. Garbage in does not equal garbage out with Spend Key. In fact, we thrive on messy data, whether that's one large instance of messy, unstructured raw data, or whether it's a collection of numerous instances, numerous data sources in different languages, with different currencies, and in an unstructured and unformatted way. That's exactly what Spenky tend to take in. So if anyone's watching this, sitting there thinking, "Oh, no, I don't think our data's in a healthy enough shape to be able to do this," that is exactly what Spenky do, and it's exactly what we provide. So essentially, we take in the data, and our AI then goes through transaction by transaction, line item by line item, and uses secondary sources to correctly categorize what that line item is. You can see an example on the screen with the GeForce MX250. For example, that could have been categorized as software. It could have been categorized as just internal spend, because the human that's inputting it into an AP system simply doesn't know what it is. So what we're able to do is use AI and take out the human element that can sometimes result in an error, and actually provide insights into, and more importantly, granular insights into exactly what companies are spending their money on, where they're spending it, and more importantly, highlight shadow spend, highlight those areas of spending that companies are unaware that is happening within the organization. And as I touched on, a big element that we see within that is the challenges of shadow IT spend. So you can see a stat there from Gartner that around 30 to 40% of purchases in enterprise involve shadow IT spending. And why is that? And why do we see that? So there's a number of reasons, and we're going to touch on some very popular examples that we've seen through our spend analytics platform, and that also Be Digital see from a software asset management perspective. So I'd just like to take some time on this slide to bring Benjamin and Stuart in as well. Benjamin, anything you want to kind of elaborate on this challenges of shadow IT spend?
Yeah, I think shadow IT spend is something that often gets misunderstood, and it's something that probably all of us on this call have indulged in at some point of our career, because we're trying to do things faster and more efficiently. It's often the case of well-intentioned employees exposing the business to certain security and financial challenges. And like you say, Wes, as Gartner have said, 30-40% of kind of budgets going unseen on this type of thing. It's significant. And I think as we go through, we'll probably be able to give you all a few more kind of in-depth examples from some of the projects that we've worked on.
Yeah, perfect, brilliant, spot on, Benjamin. Stuart, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it is, as we're saying along here, it's that unexpected spend that is the shadow IT. People naturally will take the path of least resistance, so they will quite happily go and buy things on credit cards and various platforms, because that's what they're used to in their personal life. They know that they can go on their phone and get an application in about 30 seconds. So if our businesses are saying, hey, it takes 3 weeks to go through an approval process, they're going to look to find a way around that.
Absolutely. And do you know what? It actually reminds me of a use case from only a few weeks ago. So we're working with a multi-billion-dollar turnover PR company who were looking to organize their P cards and their purchasing structures. And so we ingested quite a lot. In fact, we ingested all of their North American, European SAP Concur expense data. And what we found was incredible. There were Atlassian licenses on there. There were a number of different software licenses, all of which the organisation had corporate contracts and with relevant payment terms, with relevant terms and conditions and payment conditions, etc. But what they still found is there was still outlying costs sitting on credit cards. To your point, Stuart, where it's almost too easy in this day and age for people to go out and buy these things on credit cards. And what they were really looking to do was identify costs that were sitting in their expense platforms that should be going through their AP. Things like software licensing, where you've got data issues and you're potentially exposing the organisation to freemium and terms and conditions that don't sit within your company's policies around data privacy, etc. And then on the flip side, also looking at certain costs that sit in their AP that could go down a corporate card or a P card route in order to take advantage of percent cashbacks that they were looking to negotiate with their P card providers. So there's a number of use cases that we can see there already, and as Benjamin touched on, we'll delve into a few more as we go through. So I already touched on granularity and how important we've found within Spenky and working with clients that granularity and providing access to exactly what organizations are spending their money on. So I just thought I'd bring up this slide that shows a before and after of Spenky. So this is almost a live example. Obviously we've changed some of the figures around. So we was working with a large UK-based manufacturer, around £3 billion turnover. Their total IT spend was just over 300. Let's take this as an example, was just over 300 million. The CTO only had access to level 1 and level 2. So what you can see on the screen, the telecoms, the software and the hardware is what he had access to. The challenge that he gave Spenky was, look guys, I'm struggling to get the insights from finance in terms of what I'm actually spending my money on. I've got an inkling that in the business software node and what we're spending, there's so much room for cost saving. The problem I have is I can't physically see that. And this particular client was actually working with a large software house and a global systems integrator for 3 months to try and get down to this level of granularity. It was actually a webinar of ours that he attended back in November. Put a call in our diary the next day. Gave us the problem statement I've just mentioned and said, look, I'm working with these 2 companies. We're 3 months into a project, and I'm a little bit concerned that we're still using Excel spreadsheets, and it's still taking a lot of my team's time on a weekly basis, bringing them in and looking into this. We said, look, no problem. We'll do a proof of value on a good chunk of your ITIS spend, and in 6 days. We got down to this, what you can see now on your screen. And in fact, we took business software up to level 6 to provide the CTO with an in-depth view and visibility of what they were spending their money on. And straight away, within an hour of presenting back, we'd identified £1.8 million worth of spend that should not have been sitting in the IT budget. So straight away, that's 1.8 million of reinvestment that the CTO could identify straight away. And then over the next 3 days, we identified 2.1 million pounds worth of saving, predominantly within the business software, that they could then start to implement. And they did so, and they did so very quickly. So I mean, off the top of my head, in terms of an ROI, we're talking thousands of times. And more importantly, over a very quick period of time. So we were able to turn it around in 6 days. Our SLA says that we will turn around this level of detail to 92% accuracy, 92 to 98% accuracy within 10 days, and 100% accuracy within 30 days. So these projects aren't long-winded. They don't take months. They don't take years, as previous pre-AI kind of spend analytics projects used to take back in the day. We're talking a matter of days to get down to this level of visibility. And what you can start doing once you've got this is, back to my point earlier, making data-driven decisions, making decisions based on data that you know is 100% accurate, and all of the allocated lots within these nodes, expenses, development, hardware, software, telecoms, etc., you know is correct. So just going to move on now to some granular spend categories and buckets that we tend to see from a shadow IT spend. And for this, I'm going to hand over to Benjamin and Stuart.
Thanks, Wes. That's really, really helpful. So I think one of the things about shadow spend is it's something that's sort of haunted IT, security, and commercial business functions since employees first started downloading files onto floppy disks so they could work on projects at home. But now shadow spend is much more challenging, what with the adoption of cloud-based software delivered via web-based services and marketplaces that don't require a centralized IT function to deploy or a centralized procurement function to approve. Some of the stats that we're seeing, particularly from Gartner, are saying that shadow cloud usage is 10% greater than the known cloud usage in an organization. And if you don't manage shadow spend, it can become a real problem, particularly around some of the kind of the software that people would take for granted that they would use. And I think, Stuart, you've got a pretty good example of something we found on a project where people were using LinkedIn personal licenses for professional usage.
Yeah, absolutely, Benjamin. What we see is that because people are so used to getting what they want as quickly as they want, they're going out and they are, with the best intentions, getting the subscription so they can get to things like LinkedIn Learning. What they're not going through is through their business organizations to understand what wider corporate subscriptions are available. So they are potentially overspending with those organizations as well, because they are not achieving the terms and conditions that have been agreed at group levels. This really is driving the incorrect actions within the business. We're going with the best intent of, look, we want to get some learning, we want to expand our networks, we want to provide value into our business. But there are more efficient ways of doing this. And it's all about making sure that it's the path of least resistance. We can make sure that companies are achieving maximum return on their investment. So whereas we may be spending, let's say, £1 million or $1 million with LinkedIn through expensed accounts, it could actually be that actually you could give the same money, every person in the organization, the same capabilities, because you've agreed rates at a much higher level. So we really want to drive forward those conversations to make sure that the money is being most efficiently spent within an organization.
Yeah, brilliant. Look, thanks, Stuart. And I've seen the same, certainly from data platforms. So one of the reasons that was put on there. So anyone attending that has a sales team, there's a very good chance that there's some looser transactions, for example, going through credit cards that are then being expensed back. I think I've seen that at almost any organisation that's got a sales team, and similar to the marketing side from the Adobe. And Benjamin, Stuart, can you just run through what we mean by freemium on here, because that may be, although it's a term most people are aware with, just why we've included it within this particular slide.
Yeah, absolutely, Wes. So yeah, what we're talking about there is the bit where people are taking up services that are free on the initial point of contact, but then they will actually pay for additional functionality within there. So you may pay, you may get a free summary view of data, but then you have to pay to get the detail behind it. This is very common in a lot of these SaaS products now, where they will tease you with, I'm going to give you all the contact details of all of your prospective opportunities that you're looking at, and go, actually, but if you want the up-to-date information, you're going to have to pay for it.
Absolutely, and it's something we see in the CRM realm as well. There's a number of freemium versions, and I suppose one of the challenges that come with that as well is the data privacy that we touched on earlier. When you're signing up to these kind of licenses, you're not going through an exhaustive legal process where you're checking terms and data privacy rights, etc. You're almost kind of giving it away slightly, and the number of projects we've worked on where we've seen a big chunk of CRM, say it's kind of £600,000 sitting with Salesforce, but then we'll see a few licenses of HubSpot over in America and one in EMEA, and then maybe a different type of CRM kicking about out in Asia, where people and salespeople are kind of going out and trialing these and paying for a particular one because it does something that they particularly need. And then just paying for it on an ongoing basis and claiming it back via expenses. And when you kind of collate all of that up, it can cost quite a bit over a period of time. Benjamin and Stuart, anything else on this slide, or are we okay to move on?
I think the only thing I will mention is, and I know Akshay is going to come onto this in his demo, that there is kind of a new beast lurking in the background of shadow spend, and that's around marketplaces. And that's definitely something we are seeing, where all those popular Microsoft, Amazon marketplaces are making it more and more easy for consumers to consume, particularly software, through a marketplace that the business just doesn't see.
Yeah, look, it's a great point and a great segue as well, Benjamin. Thank you. So, on that point, so and from a cloud marketplace perspective, just going to hand over to Akshay now. That's going to run through a live demonstration of our platform and show you how we can use SpendKey to identify some of this shadow spend that is either going through one of these platforms. But for now, we're going to focus on the cloud example. So, Akshay, if I can hand over to yourself.
Hello, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Wes, Benjamin, and my other colleagues who are on this platform or on this webinar. We have been talking about shadow spend. We have been talking about spend on credit cards and how easy it is to buy things nowadays in the current environment. What I'm going to show you here is our platform's feature of looking at all this data, the taxonomy details that Wes talked about, going into that granular insights. And once that granular insight is available into our platform, how easy it is for you to find information. And one example that I'm going to pick up today in this demonstration is around Amazon. A lot of us are buying a lot of cloud services, and we hardly have full visibility of what services do we buy, from whom do we buy. Especially, you can buy through marketplaces, you could buy through resellers, you could buy directly from the providers like the Amazons and the Googles and the Microsofts of the world. And once the data is all ingested into our platform, it becomes a lot more easier for you to get that full visibility. And what I'm showing you right now is a reseller's inside dashboard. And I've just gone and searched on the keyword Amazon. And what I see now, just by putting that keyword, is how many transactions do I have with Amazon? What's my total spend? It's about 1 million. And then I see how many different suppliers I have on the right hand side from whom I buy the services. And in this particular instance, we have split it by the region. So you could also start seeing this in APAC, EMEA, North America. And the table here where I'm clicking my mouse, you could go and start searching. So this Amazon DynamoDB provision throughput licenses, you are spending close to £50,000. Is it just from one provider, or are you spreading that across different providers? You could start seeing that information just by clicking on the data, and it's so much easier for you to understand. And on the other hand, if you want to see, okay, what am I buying from a company called as Cloud Sigma in North America, you go on the right hand side and you can start looking at what are the different things that you buy from them. What this feature is allowing you to do is get that full visibility, transparency on your spend across your resellers. And I know this from experience, having worked in the procurement and management consulting space, how challenging it is for organizations to get this visibility. There's lots of providers. For example, Cisco is another example where they sell through a lot of resellers. Getting that visibility, Microsoft licenses, Adobe licenses, Atlassian, all these popular tools that we use today, they could be sourced from various channels, and getting that visibility quite easily into a single dashboard is the power that we give you at your fingertips to make strategic decisions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Akshay. And I think that just that hammers home the point we made earlier around the visibility, and just how important it is to quickly and easily have the visibility of what you're spending your money on. And it almost sounds like it should be taken for granted, but the reality is a lot of organizations don't have this visibility to hand. So that's something that we provide, as you can see here. Brilliant. Thanks, Akshay. So I will go back into my.
And I think I'll just while we're getting up the slides, Wes, I'll just go through a couple of use cases regarding hosting and marketplace. So
Please.
A lot of companies have had a bit of a downturn in terms of forecast. In fact, that's hitting a lot of industries quite hard at the moment. And they've signed up to potentially big commitments with their hosting providers, 3 years ago, based on this great forecast that no longer has come true. And clients, so if you're sat there on this webinar thinking, I have a big shortfall for my minimum commit with a hosting provider, what am I going to do about it? Well, there's a number of things that can be done. And effectively getting some of the information from the hosting providers can be a timely process. And we can circumvent that. And trying to find software that you're purchasing that could be made as a contribution towards that shortfall is one lever that you can potentially pull. And I'm saying this because we did this for a client recently. They were short by about $2 million on their commitment, and it was a mixture of finding consistency across how they optimize their cloud spend. So that was going to Stuart's example, where lots of people were purchasing cloud and there was no consistency around, were they optimizing savings plans? Were they optimizing reserved instances? And getting all the data together and pulling more than anything, pulling together a team to work on this in a very tight time frame. So we had 3 months to get this shortfall. Otherwise, it was money out the door that was wasted. And this client ended up finding another 1.5 million in commitments in reserved instances and savings plans, or the equivalents of. This was an AWS example, and about 500,000 in marketplace spend, where they went out and bought various different software licenses through marketplace to hit that commit. So if anyone's on this call thinking I'm in that position, I could do with a way of finding out how I can get out of this shortfall commitment, and then happy to talk through that at any point in a bit more detail. But I thought that's a good example of some of the points that you raised there, Stuart, and Akshay and Wes. So thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Alex. Can you see my screen now, team? I should be on the key contractual terms.
I can't see them yet, so Babita wants to just show them. So it's showing. I think it's just taking a second to change to the right view or the right screen, Wes, at your side. But while that's happening, so we have a new feature. We have 2 new features here at Spenky that we're launching. One of them is around contractual risk. So to the point around OpenAI and the use of OpenAI and the explosion of how powerful it is. Right now, for a financial services company, we are ingesting 1,500 contracts, and we are pulling out 20 key terms, and we call it the contract metadata. But those 20 key terms can be very flexible. And of course, what we tend to advise is there's often a core number of terms, like the start date and the end date and who signed it. But just imagine in 10 days' time, you could have every single one of your contract and know every single term in that contract. And not only that, set targets around where you'd like those key terms to be. You'd only have to negotiate a cost of living adjustment with one of your big providers, and the tool will pay for itself 10, 20 times over. I think Wes mentioned a large figure earlier on of 1,000. That's not quite right. He got a bit carried away there. But just imagine you've got some contracts and you haven't got this information. Cost of living, in particular, retail price indexes. I'll give you a good example of this was a dev company providing effectively bodies in Poland. They had an RPI index that they hadn't pulled the trigger on for 2 years. They came back to the client and it was a 30% increase, 30% based on the RPI. So there's lots of risks lurking around in these contracts that come back and can bite you. 30% increase on, I think it's about 30 FTE that was based out in Ukraine and Poland, etc. But just one example of just one term. That's one term that came back, and we managed to negotiate some of that out, but it wasn't proactive. And then it kicked off a whole exercise around, we need to be on the front foot so that we don't get these budget shortfalls. That's one example of one term. Payment terms is quite binary, so I'll use that. Pushing payment terms out to a consistent manner across the organization. Some people are paying on 0 days if it's corporate card. Others are paying on, 20, 30, and perhaps there's a desire to move those out to 60, 90, 120 and free up some working capital. So 2 examples there that are very hard hitting and very easy to get visibility of. And we can give you that visibility all within 10 days. And we're coming on to a bit of a special offer that we have towards the end, which I'll talk through. So that's contracts. Any questions on contracts? Again, it's quite basic functionality, but we've all been there where we haven't had that information, or it's taken 6 to 9 months to get the budget signed off because it's costing, hundreds of thousands of pounds or teams of lawyers, and we're doing it for a few quid per contract. So it's really fast and efficient and cost efficient as well. So another module is our opportunity console. And this is where we really do have a lot of synergy with Be Digital. So all of our spend analytics and all of our contract analytics can be provided in one place. And we take all of that into an opportunity wizard, whereby we work with the client and set different rules around what's our strategy for a particular buckets of spend. I mean, we call them nodes, but look, I think this one here, you probably can't see it, but I think it says WAN Europe. So this is a global company that decided that they're going to set a strategy at the regional level. So it's not a global strategy, it's not an in-country, it's a regional level. And we've pulled in all the information to say, well, across Europe, these are your WAN providers. Again, this is dummy information. And there are 10 suppliers. And there's a strategy here around, do we need 10 suppliers and can we terminate? So we start to have those conversations around what would a consolidation look like? How long would it take? And what are the likely savings? And this is all auto-generated within 10 days. And I don't claim that this is the silver bullet, but what it is a lot of information in one place where somebody like Be Digital can work with yourself to fine tune and say, well, Spenke's saying here we can go from 10 suppliers to 2 suppliers and save some money. Is that valid? Yes or no? Or maybe it's, we can lose 2 or 3 suppliers, or maybe we can't. But there's hundreds of these opportunities at that bucket level, whether it be CRM software, LinkedIn, WAN Europe, etc. And then the sort of icing on the cake, and you'll see more of this over the next few years, is benchmarking and insights. Has been, everybody wants to know what should I be paying or what's everybody else doing. For my 20-year career in procurement, the old school way of doing that was to go and send out pre-qualification questionnaires, RFIs. Probably take you 3 or 4 months to find out who was the real competition, who in this particular region is the core set of providers. This information now is all readily available with the use of AI. So we've got an insight button here that, again, apologies, you can't quite see it, but we've got SAP. You can click on here, click insights, and we can provide lots of different insights into that particular bucket of spend. So if it's WAN Europe, who are the main competitors? How should I structure what are the pros and cons of a 5-year agreement versus a 3-year agreement? Lots of insights that are generated at the touch of a button. And the way we've engineered this, and we're doing we've got 2 pilots in place. So it's a new feature, 2 pilots in place. One of them's around SIM cards and the other one's around chemicals. Where we're making sure that what's provided is from valid sources. So Stuart and I were discussing yesterday around what's the validity of some of this AI, what are the sources? You've got these large language models that are effectively making up sources. So that's something that we're very conscious of, and we do our absolute utmost to make sure that we have a series of checks and balances to validate sources of information, etc. So I'll stop there. There's lots of functionality within this particular opportunity console. And again, we're going to talk through the offer towards the end of this particular seminar.
Brilliant, thank you, Alex. And that leads us in nicely to the partnership and where Spenke and Be Digital kind of align. So for this, I'm going to hand over to Benjamin and Stuart.
Thank you very much, Wes, and thanks, Alex. I think it's really important that we talk about this because this is where we work really closely together, and we kind of use the mantra or the value statement of find the money, get the money, keep the money, or discover, optimize, and manage. The key take home here for you guys is why Be Digital are working in such close partnership with Spenke is two things. It's visibility and it's speed. Visibility, quite simply, if you can't see it, you won't be able to manage it. And that is where we help you to find the money. The other key component of the partnership is speed. When you use Spenke, you're no longer looking for the needle in the haystack. You're simply taking the haystack away and focusing directly on the needle. The get part of this, get the money, this is where Be Digital work with you to review the applications, understand the risks of the unsanctioned applications, help you move individual licenses into the group agreements, mitigate the risks associated with those, make the most of the contracts you already have, and drive value through existing agreements, suppliers, and let you get control on the risks and the money. We work with you to focus a very specific set of spotlights on the spend that's been hiding in the shadows and the reasons as to why staff have been circumventing the official channels. If I hand over to you, Stuart, you can talk to us a little bit more about how we keep that money and how we make sure that these risks don't start to remanifest again.
Absolutely. I think that's the key message in there, isn't it, Benjamin, is that once you've found this money, you've got this money, you don't want it to reoccur within your organization. So this is where we're looking at your operating models, your policy, your procedures, and making sure that there is the safe route for end users to actually go and make those purchases, so they're not tempted to go down the P card route and just buy as and when required, or even worst case scenario, that they're using it through their expenses. You know, we want to make sure that the organization has the correct tools in place to make the right business decisions.
That's a really good point, and it brings us around nicely to how this partnership really functions, because we kind of come in with Spenke on the find, we do our piece around optimization and getting the money, and then if you're the CEO or you're the CFO, you kind of need some proof. Is this working? Are these processes working? Where's the proof? You look at Spenke and you can see it right in front of you. And I think, Wes, that segues nicely back to your good self.
Brilliant, lovely, thank you both. So that actually wraps up the webinar from a slide deck perspective. So we're going to jump into a panel discussion. We've got a few FAQs that we'd like to cover off first, as these normally come up on a regular basis, and then we'll go through and answer any questions that have been provided by you, the attendees, as well. So Alex, Akshay, I'm going to hand over to your good selves on the first few from a garbage in equals garbage out. So this is something I touched on earlier, and I'm going to hand over to the procurement professionals who have lived and breathed this for over 20 years and experienced what it was like and why we've tried fixing this issue within Spenke.
Yeah, and so I'll provide a bit of a high-level summary of one of the projects which we're working on, and Akshay's quite heavily involved in that and can probably add a bit more colour. But and you touched on it earlier, I think it was yourself, Wes, around some of the hesitation to start a project like this is a lot of business owners, budget owners, just believe that their data's so bad, how can this possibly work? And we cross-reference that data with external sources. And I think just what we do is we just don't take your data as it is. So if you run analytics on your current data, garbage in will equal garbage out. And that's not what we do. We take that information and we put it into a clean, consistent manner by cross-referencing, looking for patterns, clusters, lots that goes on, to enable us to enrich that data down to those, 5 or 6 levels. So we're taking data in from multiple sources. That could be existing contract databases, which we're doing for a manufacturer. your existing SAP, accounts payable, your T&E expense systems, your software and asset management systems, your now HR data, ID and access management systems, payroll. So this is SpendKey becoming a central point for lots of systems that have been generated by humans and are therefore incomplete, inconsistent. And we've got one client that's got 14 instances of Microsoft Dynamics and 20 instances of Coupa and lots of different systems, but no one system with everything in one place. And the use case there was not only visibility, but also savings, and also the politics of recharging across the business. So if you're a group, CIO, CTO, and that's a big pain point in terms of how do I allocate these costs. Akshay mentioned, I think yesterday, around, there was an asset that was used by 5 shift workers. So how do we take that information and make sure that allocation goes across to the right business units? And we can do all that by getting everything into one place and enabling better visibility in a nutshell. Actually, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah. So the other thing I would like to add to what Alex just said is he also mentioned that this is not a silver bullet, but what we have done with this customer is 93% of the data is now being matched, including the shift working, and we are able to allocate that cost. 7% area where there is a problem, we have been able to nail down that 7% area and say, these are some of the areas, these are the people, these are the business units where we don't have the right level of information. And now they can fix those in the source and also go back, and they're also looking at the whole process in terms of optimizing their process, because now they know what is broken, why it is broken, and what do they need to do to fix it. So that visibility, that level of transparency is also something that you shouldn't undermine as part of this process.
Yeah, and this particular client have fully automated their financing and budgeting within IT. So it's a really good example, and now they're looking to roll it out across all departments because IT has set such a great benchmark for how it should be done. So it's a really good example of getting this right and leading from the front, from a company perspective, to shine a positive light on technology. You can always get a hard time for always being the blame for the performance issues of applications and downtime. It's usually bad news, right? That we have to manage. This is a real chance to do something quite innovative and potentially, at first, this did feel like stepping on finance and procurement's toes. So but to be frank, the finance view wasn't good enough, and the procurement view wasn't detailed or business-like. So again, it's creating something very bespoke that's very meaningful to your requirements, and doing that quickly. So yeah, if you're having those same frustrations with finance and procurement, then this is a really good example of how we can overcome them. And now those two business units of advocates, and they're wanting to replicate that across the rest of the organisation. So initial bit of resistance, but on the whole, they're now champions. So,
and it's been a great use case, hasn't it, Alex? So for anyone wondering, that's the company earlier that I mentioned about the CTO saying, I need to know what I'm spending my money on, or where I'm spending my money. Once we'd showed where they were spending their money, they then turned around and said, right, is this what I should be spending my money on? Which is where the forecasting and budgeting that Alex just touched on came from. So that was really a use case that just kept evolving. And it's safe to say now that SpendKey are not only just doing their spend analytics, but their finance forecasting, budgeting, and pretty much everything within the IT. I think it would be safe to say, Alex, from a forecasting perspective. Which brings us on nicely to the next question, actually. So what is the typical implementation timeframe for SpendKey? So again, this is something that I touched on earlier. I didn't go into too much detail because I knew we had these FAQs lined up towards the end. So actually, you probably spend more time than anyone else within Spenke actually implementing the solutions. Do you just want to take this question?
Yeah, the typical implementation time, if you give us access to the data, initially could be in an Excel or a CSV format. We could get this up and running in under 10 days. And that is irrespective of whether you want to use your taxonomy, you want to use our taxonomy, or you want a hybrid one. So we have had customers who don't have taxonomy and we have used Spenke taxonomy. The manufacturer we spoke about on the previous use case, they had their taxonomy only up to level 1 and 2. We then created a hybrid going up to level 3, 4, and 5. So all the complexities we can manage within 10 days. Within 10 days, you'll have your dashboards out of the box ready. You'll get your first visibility. And then if you want to refine some views, can I do this? Or can I slice this data that way, this way? Can you add this level? Can you add that lens? That can be done again very quickly within a matter of hours to days. But we are not talking about months here. None of our projects has taken significant amount of time, howsoever complex or the quality of data can be very poor. Yeah.
I think the one thing though to flag for those of you that are maybe sat in a role within FS or customer sensitive area of the business, you know, the big amount of time is just getting through IT security due diligence. So we're used to filling in, 250 questions from a PR company or a bank. That can take, the most amount of time. So what we tend to say is we, kick that off almost immediately. So NDAs signed within a couple of days, kick off that IT. Not all companies will require that for POVs. If this isn't customer sensitive information, then we can get POVs sometimes done under NDAs, but somebody might be sat there thinking, absolutely no chance, this would still have to go through. So yeah, just be mindful that there's the usual due diligence that we have to go through, which in some organizations is a few days. In others, it can be as long as a month or 6 weeks. But we're ISO 271 compliant and all of that good stuff. And I get this question a lot. How secure is it? And my general response to that is, well, where is your data now? And it's usually in exactly the same place as where we're going to put ours. And we're cloud agnostic. So if you have a particular preference on, whether you're AWS or Google, we can spin up in a particular region within 24 hours. So we can be within your preferred cloud instance as well if required. I mean, we can also go on-prem with that. There's additional costs for any public sector or highly sensitive projects. So yeah, we're fully flexible. It doesn't take long, and we haven't had one project that's failed due to IT security.
I think the big takeaway from that, Alex, is the flexibility. And the speed at which we work at. Right, there's never been a problem that we haven't been able to get around that we've come across so far. But please test us on that. If anyone's got one they think we might not be able to, then give us a try. And Alex, you touched on this earlier when we was talking about the garbage in, garbage out. But I get these insights from my ERP system. Why should I use spend analytics? You kind of touched on it earlier. Do you want to just expand on that slightly?
So time and speed. So if you've got reporting cycles, building these reports within the traditional ERP systems can take weeks. So, we can be real time and dynamic. We can be nightly, we can be weekly, but the reporting itself is at the touch of a button. So massive advantage if you're reporting on targets, on spend, on progress, or we've got customers that they rely on our data to build their interim reports and their annual reports as well. So time, the trustworthiness of the data. So we're taking your data through a data pipeline that has, for each transaction, in fact, I don't know the exact number on this, but for each transaction, we carry out millions of processes. So every single transaction is scrutinized. So you can, this isn't, we hope Joe in accounts payable got this one right today. We're making sure of it, and we're really building a level of trust in the data that quite often is not there at the moment. Where I've been in roles where I know that mobile spend is 2 or 3 million, but the report's saying I don't spend any money. Why is that? Well, the data's not accurate and able to give you those insights. So they're just two. But I think what I learned from spending a few years selling spend analytics as a CEO who used to work in procurement is not many people care about analytics. But what they really do care about is, what can I do with this data? And that's where savings, consolidation, shadow spend, all of this is just unlocked. And you're no longer sat there thinking, how am I going to do this? Where am I going to start? To Benjamin's point, you're looking at the needle, and that's where you're going to start. It's pinpoint accurate, and it's glaringly obvious just after seeing the data where you're going to start. So speed, accuracy of data, all of that thing's great, but you can deliver bottom line savings in a very short space of time. And we've got an example from a company that deployed the analytics before Christmas last year. It's a CTO who's now the best performing business unit in the company in terms of cost reduction. So, going from what do we need to do, where do we start, to 6 months later, the CFO shouting and singing praises, to the point now where they want to replicate what technology have done across all other areas of the business. So,
yeah, perfect. And Alex, I think the big one that jumps out to me there is it's the fact that we're not just taking ERP data and presenting that back. It's that data pipeline that you mentioned, the millions of compute process that go into cleansing and enhancing that data. So the analytics that we're providing back is actually analytics that most clients haven't seen before. It's completely new data, and it's completely fresh, and more importantly, it's correct, which is obviously what we're here to do.
And I think as well, bespoke and customized the requirements. So if you've got I need to react to a situation in a particular region, business unit, I need to see things in a certain way, then it's all can be done on the fly. You haven't got to wait for a team to go and build a report for 2 weeks. So I'm conscious, Wes, of time in a few minutes.
You just took the words out of my mouth, actually. So we've got a few questions on the board as well. So I'm going to skip this next FAQ. We're going to go to the next slide to just discuss the offer, and then we're going to answer some of the questions on the board as we touched on at the beginning. If we don't get around to answering the questions, we will answer them in an email and send it out to all attendees. So Alex, are you okay to run through this?
Yes, so absolutely excited to offer this. The two, and I see there's a comment from Neil on the slides were a bit blurred. So yeah, we can share the slides afterwards so you can see those, Neil. These are two new features that are in testing at the moment. So by the end of the month, we'll have finished the contract data extraction with 1,500 contracts for a client, and the opportunity assessment for another client around finding savings. So as they're new, we'd like more people to test them. So we're giving them away for free. So if you've got, 500 contracts sat on a desk and you want to get all the key terms out of them, then come and speak to me and we'll do it all for nothing. But there is a catch. This is, you have to take the spend analytics in order for the opportunity assessment to work. So becoming a spend key customer means you get the free contract data extraction and the free opportunity assessment, which is usually chargeable. And the only way we can do the opportunity assessment is have all that clean data and all of that contract data. So our pricing's on our website for what spend analytics costs, which starts at 34K, just to give you an idea. So if that sounds like, if you haven't jumped out the window at that, you're going to get all of the contract data extraction and all of the opportunity assessment thrown in at no extra charge, because we're just looking for clients to really test that and give us feedback. So it's a thorough test, but you will get great value for money. And I think I'll hand over to the Be Digital, who are also going to work with us on this in terms of providing some of the additional consulting on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. At Be Digital, what we're offering and proposing to do is when you get that analytics back from SpendKey, we'll do a complimentary risk report and an hour workshop with you, just kind of going through what some of those risks are, what some of those terms mean, how they impact, particularly around your software spend and your software agreements. And yeah, we really welcome the chance to work with some of you guys.
Fantastic. Look, but yeah, thanks both. I think that's hopefully that's compelling enough. We'll see when we get through the follow-ups. And in terms of next steps, we've got you've got our details there, so we'll be following up as well. But feel free to reach out to either Steve or myself to take us up on those offers. And just before we finish, I think we've got some time to just answer some of the questions that have been asked from the attendees. Babita, have you got them up, or Alex, Akshay, can you see them? I'm looking at my screen.
Yeah.
Sure. Oh, go on, Akshay. I can see them on the
there's one question from Ibrahim which says, just curious if SpendKey supports the audit of overlapping software functionalities. Yes, to answer that question, Ibrahim. In terms of the granularity we provide, so I'll give you one example. Label printing software. We are just doing that for a manufacturing company. So you could see there are 4 or 5 different label printing softwares or CRMs, or email automation or marketing utilities, office productivity suites, project management. It goes to that level of granularity, so you can see which different products you use for the same functionality, and you can then see which one you want to standardize on and get rid of the others.
A really good example of that with a client who, in the good days, was a little bit laxed around what productivity tools that they use. So lo and behold, they've got Zoom, they've got Slack, they've got Workspace, all doing the same thing now, all hosting calls and communication channels, and paying for a license for everybody in their entire organization. That was 5,000 employees plus. So, that's a great example of overlapping, and where now that the forecasts are changed, times are harder, they're looking to tighten up. No longer is it a good idea to just have 3 products that do the same thing. And I think the spend was about 600,000. Then they're looking now to reduce that down to around 200,000. So again, huge savings opportunity where a bit of demand challenge becomes glaringly obvious.
Yeah. And one question from Steve is, can you identify people buying from platforms such as AWS with bundled software? To answer that question, Steve, yes. What we could also ingest as part of the data is your invoices. So any receipts, invoices that people submit when they buy things on their credit card, or if you're buying it through corporate cards, P cards, can also be scanned. We can extract information and we can give that level of granularity that you are after.
Yeah. I think the point there is, wherever there's a blocker in the information, the existing information, we just dig a bit deeper. So we take the spade and we'll go and look at contracts, or we'll go and look at invoices until we get what we find, the right level of detail. Question here of, is there a recording? There will be, Chris. So we'll share a recording with everybody after the webinar closes. I think it will go out within the next sort of half hour or so. So if you've missed the start, then you can watch that in your own time.
Brilliant. If that wraps up the questions, that gives us a minute to spare, which is pretty good going for a webinar. To be fair, they're either short or run over slightly. So look, we're spot on time. So again, just like to thank everybody for taking the time out. I know we've all got busy diaries and calendars, so really appreciate taking the time. Anyone that has missed, as we've just touched on, the recording will be sent out to you via email. We are also hosting one hosting the same webinar on the 24th for a little bit later in the afternoon for any of our American colleagues to join. So if you have missed it and you'd rather relive the live experience than watch the recording, feel free to join that as well. That will go out in the email we send. But again, thank you very much for your time. Reach out to myself and Steve regarding the offers that we touched on, and hopefully we have spark a few conversations with some of the attendees today. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.